It's not often that I find myself wanting to replay a game that is likely to take me over 100 hours to complete. I love Japanese role-playing games, but they're huge time sinks, and playing even the greatest JRPGs for a second time is often a tough ask of my gaming time. That said, Persona 5 isn't any old JRPG. When it was released back in 2017, it was praised for being a stylish adventure that tackled complicated themes with its cast. It certainly wasn't perfect, with some notable gameplay annoyances, and some aspects of the narrative open to criticism, but those blemishes were not enough to detract from how fantastic the overall game was to play. Persona 5 Royal arrives later this month, and is basically a remastered and rethought version of the original game, with extra plot dropped in at the end. If you want a deep breakdown of Persona 5, check out Polygon's original review. This review of Royal will focus mostly on where the new version differs from the old. For anyone completely new to Persona 5, here's a quick summary. You play as a teenage boy in Japan who is falsely accused of a crime and ends up with a criminal record. You make friends with other kids who have been screwed over by evil adults, discover the power to make those evil adults feel remorse and confess their crimes by fighting monsters in their brain, and set about trying to save the world. You spend half your time out in the real world working part-time jobs, studying for exams, and building friendships, and the other half fighting monsters, stealing treasure, and convincing other teens and bizarre creatures to fight by your side. Now, if you've played through the original Persona 5 before, I want to warn you upfront that the first 100 or so hours you spend in Persona 5 Royal will be a familiar experience. While some new content is sprinkled throughout the opening months of the story, and a lot of quality of life improvements are present, you could honestly do exactly the same actions on exactly the same days in Royal and get largely the same results. The bulk of the new story content comes in the game's newly added third semester, but until then, changes to the narrative will be pretty few and far between. You'll be seeing interesting incremental tweaks, not grand design overhauls, during a lot of your time in this fictional Japan. Persona 5 Royal introduces two new Confidante characters, the aspiring gymnast Kasumi and the school counselor Takoto. Kasumi is the game's new playable party member, but it's important to note that she's actually not playable at all until the third semester, even though she's dropped into the narrative right from the start. Her early scenes mostly feel forced. She is the only named, recurring character to have seemingly nothing to do with the main plot, and it's initially a little odd. You're forced to befriend her, and while she's well written, she has half as many social links as other characters, and often seem disconnected from the main story. Takoto, on the other hand, is dropped relatively seamlessly into the existing narrative. After the events of the game's first dungeon, in which a teacher is unmasked as having been abusing students, Takoto is brought in to provide much-needed mental health support to you and your classmates. While your visits to the new counselor are optional and left for you to fit into your busy schedule, your other party members will visit him of their own accord throughout the game, providing nice glimpses of insight into the mental health struggles of a group of teens trying to change the world. And while the investigator Akechi is not new to Persona 5 Royal, his social link has been totally revamped. You now bond with Akechi in your own time, rather than via scripted events, much like the other characters in the game. He has several new scenes, which better flesh him out as a character, and offer valuable insights that for returning players are worth exploring. It's vital to max out all three of these new Confidantes as much as possible before the end of the second semester. That's because it's possible to miss key parts of the third semester entirely if you haven't ranked up these characters in time, something that is not communicated well to the player. Honestly, when it comes to my overall thoughts on Persona 5 Royal, they're pretty simple. If you love the original game and have been wanting to replay it, there are plenty of quality of life improvements to make your replay smoother, and the additional content in the third semester is a real treat. You'll have to replay a lot of content, but the new story beats, characters, and gameplay changes are worth the time. If you've never played Persona 5, and the idea of a lengthy JRPG about making friends, making evil adults admit their crimes, and fighting monsters sounds cool, this is the definitive way to experience the game. Be aware of some problematic plot elements that are not totally fixed. But the game is stylish, full of things to do, and still one of the most interesting JRPGs of this console generation.